Hi, my name is Anand Muralidharan. I'm here today with the crew at Answer to tackle some of the most asked questions about sports broadcasting. I'm a freelance sports producer who's worked on a bunch of sports events all across India and Asia over the last 3-4 years. To name a few, the Cricket World Cup, the Hockey World Cup, events in football, tennis, golf, and MMA. Let's get right to it. There's no way that these sports commentators know so much information and data, right? How do they always seem to know so much detail? There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes with the commentators prepping themselves individually for these broadcasts. I know of a personal example where I've seen commentators come in with an entire binder of a book with a lot of information about games that's happened previously in the season and also with what game that they're going to be covering on the day. So they do a lot of detailed preparation and research before they do come on broadcast. Are sports broadcasted in 4K? Is it worth buying a 4K TV? Sports are broadcasted in 4K, not too much here in India currently, but it's slowly going to get there. The IPL is also not broadcast 4K currently as per my knowledge, but then they will slowly start to get there. The La Liga do have a 4K broadcast. Some of the American sports have a 4K broadcast. Is it worth buying a 4K TV? I'm not sure currently. I think you could hold off on it. There's not too many sports being broadcasted in 4K currently here in India. How many cameras are there during a normal cricket game? Is it just one guy going very fast from one area to the other? There are multiple cameras positioned all across the stadium, anywhere between 8 to 40 for cricket matches, depending on the budget of the event. So the IPL generally tends to have around 30 to 40 cameras, and some of the lower budget cricket events like your Karnataka Premier League or your Saurashtra Premier League will have somewhere around 8 to 12 cameras. Are there microphones in the stadium? How do these TV channels capture the audio of the crowd? Like cameras, microphones are positioned all across the stadium, some on the field of play and some also where the crowd are in the stands. And these are ambient microphones to pick up the crazy noise that the crowd make in the stadium. There is a huge audio team that's working on the entire audio capture of the entire event. So there is a main audio operator who's in the control room who has access to all the inputs from all the audio devices placed in the stadium. Depending on the camera that's shot and cut by the director, he has to regulate his faders up and down related to the shot that's being cut on TV. And it's a really hands-on job with a very dedicated crew of audio professionals working the audio segment. I'm pretty sure I've seen footballers knock camera people over. Who pays for a camera if it's damaged? I'm quite sure they aren't cheap. They are definitely not cheap. And these cameras are insured by the camera owner, and I also think they have third-party ownership because they get rented out by multiple third-party players who then use the equipment to broadcast their game. So they're all insured and they're very expensive and they generally don't break. The graphics that come during a sports broadcast on TV are those made by a guy sitting in the stadium. They're operated by a guy or a small group of guys and girls who are working at the stadium, but then the design of it is done by a team or an individual in the months leading up to the game. So all the template designs for the graphics are all done months prior or weeks prior to the event, and it's operated by a group of operators at the venue. My friend says that all the studio backgrounds for sports broadcasts are actually just green screens. Someone tell me if this is true. I have $5,000 riding on this bet. Semi-true. Most of the broadcasts that you're currently seeing in late 24 and early 25 points to having a green screen studio background for the entire studio. But that's a relatively new development. You still have the old school method of just having a regular old studio with some TV graphics behind them and a normal table. Going forward, more and more of them are going to be studio green screens. What sports game has the largest audience in India? Is it the IPL finals? What are the other big sports with a lot of people watching? In India, viewership metric for top 10 sports, 1 to 10 will all be cricket. So the IPL final and the Cricket World Cup final might be the most watched events in India. Football World Cup final might compete with these two individual events, the IPL final and the cricket final, but outside of these three sports, WWE, in my opinion, which is sports entertainment, not entirely a sport, captures a lot of viewers in India on a weekly basis, and I think they might be the most watched sports entertainment property in the country. I feel sports have a narrative going on nowadays, particularly with the trailers and teasers that lead up to a specific game. Are there writers who craft this narrative, or is this just organic? Everything about a sports broadcast is set up based on the narrative of sport and about bringing out narratives of players and people who are playing the sport. So narrative is what drives the entire sports broadcast and the sports world. There are producers and broadcasters who try to pull out this narrative. Are there specifically writers, like say writers for a movie show? Not necessarily, but then something very similar in terms of bringing these stories out from the athletes. So it's like a reporter, producer kind of a thing rather than a writer. But there are people who are shaping the narrative. How can I become a sports director? Is there such a thing? I would imagine there is. What does a sports director do actually? There is definitely such a thing as a sports director. He's involved of capturing and putting out the broadcast and switching every image that you end up watching on a broadcast. How does one become a sports director? Inherently, you need to have an inclination towards film and definitely need to know your sport. One pathway do the thing conventionally is to be part of a media industry setup or a broadcast setup, and you will have to work your way up to the director role because it's the most coveted position in the broadcast. And you'll have to work your way up from being a camera person or a replay operator or a producer before you start moving into the seat of a director. I always feel like there's one cameraman who's picking out the prettiest girls during a sports event. Is that true? There are a bunch of cameramen whose job it is to get a lot of reactionary shots from people at the venue. Do they focus on a lot of pretty girls? Yes, they do. The template for it is to focus on women, crazy men, and just crazy people in general who are reacting very vigorously to the action on the field. And that brings out the emotion that the director and the camera people are all looking for in order to translate that to the viewer who's sitting in their houses. So yes, they do pick out a lot of pretty girls and crazy people because they're trying to show emotion from the venue to the viewer at home. How is it that replay, compilations, and highlights are available almost immediately? Replays and highlights are a key facet of sports, and the replay operators and the replay team are getting all the inputs from the live cameras directly to their setups, and they have to throw out their replay in 3 to 5 seconds. So what they're essentially doing is picking out some of the best camera angles from all the cameras set up all across the stadium to give the viewer and the sports fan exactly what's required based on the incident that just happened. So if it's a goal that's happened, they're going to give you 3 best angles or 4 best angles of the goal, including the celebration. If it's a, say, handball incident, they're going to give you 3 angles or 4 angles, whatever the cameras have got, to give the viewer a perspective on if the ball's hit the person's hand or if it hasn't. So it's all real time, and they don't have much time to do their jobs, and it's a really difficult gig to undertake. Does the camera person ever hear the commentators? All the camera people in the stadium constantly hear the director, producer, and the commentator. So if the commentator is talking about, say, an injured player or a specific player, all camera people can hear the commentator in order to change their shot and give the director a shot based off what the commentator is talking about. So it's a completely well-run system with everyone being able to hear everybody, despite being in different locations. How challenging and expensive is it to live stream at the scale of IPL? The IPL is one of India's biggest sports properties, and to live stream at the scale of the IPL is absolutely a huge task. It requires a lot of budget, it requires lots of resources across different fields. And is it possible to do? For sure, but you also need to have the resources to back with us. What kind of prep goes into making a game happen, including prep for all stakeholders, cameras, editors, directors, presenters, visuals, music, streaming, etc. A lot of prep goes into it. It's like a 3-day pre-rig process before the event starts. So the entire broadcast crew gets on location, connects and retests and checks everything. But if you have to take it back to the earlier planning stage, it's months in advance to get sponsorships lined up, to get the entire crew in different stages, from the events crew to the broadcast crew to the operations crew across the event. It's a long, drawn-out planning process which takes 3-4 months from the initial time period it starts to actual execution of the event. I've had a great time answering your questions about sports broadcast. It's been a great time here with the crew at Answered. Until next time, thank you.